Welcome to The Explainer. All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to break down the massive geopolitical shifts that are reshaping our world, and, most importantly, what it all means for India's strategic future.
This quote right here, it really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. The old rulebook, the one written after World War II, is pretty much falling apart. And in its place, we're seeing a new, much more competitive era. So the big questions are, how did we get here? And where are we headed? Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to follow a kind of hourglass structure. We'll start big picture with the fractured state of the world, then we'll zoom in on a really critical flashpoint that's testing old alliances. After that, we'll zoom back out to see the great realignment that's happening, and finally, we'll focus right in on India's path forward. So, let's kick things off with part one, really getting to grips with the seismic shift that got us into this fractured world order in the first place. You know, this timeline does a great job of showing just how fast things have changed. We went from the Cold War standoff between two superpowers to this brief unipolar moment after 1991 where the US was clearly on top. But look here, 2008, that's the real game changer. The global financial crisis plus China's incredible economic rise completely shattered that one superpower world, leading us to the messy, super competitive environment we're in today. So what does this contested order actually look like on the ground? Well, it's defined by big powers going it alone to protect their own interests. You see them carving out their own spheres of influence. Think about Russia's actions in Ukraine or China's posture towards Taiwan. Heck, even the US is restamping its authority in the Western Hemisphere. This is a far cry from global cooperation. It's a world of intense competition. Okay, so to really get a feel for how these big global fractures are actually playing out, let's zoom in on a specific and frankly pretty wild case study, a crisis brewing deep inside of NATO. At its heart is this one core principle, Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all. It's a simple idea, right? But it's been the absolute bedrock of Western security for more than 70 years. It's the ultimate "we've got your back" promise. And here's the kicker. What happens when the very country that's supposed to be your biggest protector starts to feel like a threat itself? That's the incredible dilemma that European countries are facing right now. And this isn't just a feeling, right? It comes from a whole series of really shocking moves. First, the US signals this new assertiveness, basically reviving its old Monroe Doctrine for the 21st century. Then comes direct military action in Venezuela. But the real bombshell for its allies was the attempt to buy territory from a fellow NATO member, Denmark, and then threatening its European partners with tariffs when they pushed back. This was a direct challenge to the idea that the US was a reliable ally. And what's so fascinating about this whole thing is that it wasn't even popular back home in the US. I mean, look at this. A solid majority of Americans, 54%, were against the idea. And in Greenland, it's an overwhelming 85% opposed. So this wasn't just a diplomatic mess. It was politically unpopular pretty much everywhere. So when the traditional anchor of the Western alliance starts acting so unpredictably, it creates a huge power vacuum. And as we zoom back out, you can see how other countries are rushing to fill that gap. This is what we're calling the Great Realignment. You can see this realignment happening in real time if you just look at global supply chains. As countries in the West try to de-risk from China, that opens up this massive opportunity for other manufacturing hubs. And who's stepping up? You can see it right here. Countries like Vietnam, Thailand, and, really importantly for our story, India. And look, this isn't just about economics. It's happening at the highest levels of diplomacy too. Both India and the European Union are now talking about strategic autonomy. Basically, they don't want to be so dependent on an unpredictable US. That's pushing them closer on things like defense and security. But as this table shows, it's not all smooth sailing. They still have some major sticking points, especially on tricky trade issues like carbon tariffs and market access. And this is where we see some really savvy diplomatic chess being played. To counter pressure from the West, India cleverly used its relationship with China as a bargaining chip. By hinting that it might ease up on restrictions against Chinese companies, restrictions put in place after their own border clashes, New Delhi sent a really clear signal. Hey, we have other options, you can't just push us around. Okay, so all of this brings us to the big question, our final section. In this messy, chaotic new world, what's India's grand strategy? What's the game plan? Well, it all comes down to a new playbook, one built for a new era. The heart of this new playbook is all about moving away from those old, rigid Cold War-style alliances. It's not about picking one side anymore. Instead, it's all about being flexible, building partnerships based on specific issues, diversifying trade away from just the US and EU, and using its giant growing economy as a serious foreign policy tool.
And a huge part of this strategy is taking on a bigger leadership role in groups that aren't dominated by the West. With the US stepping back on certain global issues, platforms like BRICS become way more important. So India's upcoming presidency in 2026, that's a massive opportunity to really drive the agenda for the Global South and push for big reforms on things like climate finance. And that really brings us to the final critical question, not just for India, but for pretty much every country out there. In this new era of shifting loyalties, what's actually more valuable? Is it sticking with old familiar alliances, or is it having the strategic agility and the freedom to make new moves? The answer to that is probably going to decide who comes out on top in this new geopolitical